Hola mi gente, aquí Alba de nuevo para hablarle de libros de Puerto Rico. Hi, I'm Alba and I'm here to talk about books from Puerto Rico. And I decided that I could no longer keep showing this book without finishing it. So I did. And it's like 2:15 a.m. On the 16th of this month. And in a few hours, I'll be going to San Juan. It's a big day in Puerto Rico today. And this book is going to be a big inspiration for me today. I told you before that El Resplandor de Luzbella was going to be a feast for my soul, a feast for my spirit, and it certainly was. I had already started the book in 2018, like in October or November. I listened to the author who participates in a radio station that I listen to, and that's how I heard about the book. And I went and bought it without knowing what it's about. I don't do fantasy. This is a fantasy. Luz Nereida, you've heard me mention her. She's the co-owner of the bookstore that I frequent in Ponce. She called it an allegory, and it is. It's full of symbolism, but it's also a fantasy, and I don't do fantasy. So I was immediately surprised at the beginning of this book. At the beginning of this book, it starts off with this young reporter, journalist, and the journalist describes himself as a person who is very well known in all sorts of circles, print media, digital media, all over. He's an influencer, according to him. His name is, he introduces himself immediately. My name is Roberto Quesada Martinez. Oh, by the way, if somebody wants me to do this in Spanish, I will gladly do it in Spanish if you can excuse my faux pas in Spanish. So I read this in Spanish, but it's easier for me to review it in English. So Cuco Quesada has been summoned by the president of Luzbella to interview the president of Luzbella, whose name is Uriel Sanchez. Now, Uriel Sanchez is the president of this mythical place called Luzbella, which has been like an urban legend in Puerto Rico. And he is the first and only journalist to be asked to interview this president who has been in power in Luzbella for 42 years. So of course, as an influencer, he accepts. And we accompany him on his trip to Luzbella. Now, since Luzbella is a country that has been is not in favor with the United States of America. You can't even find it on the map. So the only way to get through to Luzbella is through very roundabout ways. Of course, first going to Panama, and then from Panama hopping on to different planes in different countries until finally arriving at Luzbella. I was floored from the very beginning. I was confused because he was asked to go, going to be the first reporter from the homeland de la patria to be asked to visit Luzbella. First, before meeting the president, he has to wait a few days until the president summons him because the president is very busy. And he gets to visit Luzbella and see what Luzbella is like. And he is mesmerized, as is the reader, because Luzbella is the Puerto Rican utopia. It is the Puerto Rico that every Puerto Rican dreams of. It is a Puerto Rico with no contamination. It's a Puerto Rico with public transportation. It's a Puerto Rico with no fast food restaurants. It's a Puerto Rico in which people can walk the streets at night in full security. It's a Puerto Rico of everybody's dream. It is utopia. He is flabbergasted, and so is the reader. You can't believe it. How did this happen? Where is Luzbella? How did this come about? That is what we learn through the interview with the president, who meets him after 3 days. But in the interview, not only can you learn about the president's early personal life, through that personal life, his childhood, the reader learns about Puerto Rican history, as far back as Uriel's grandparents. And we get to hear about important events in Puerto Rican history as lived by the grandparents, Uriel's own parents, and then Uriel as a young man. It's a very moving, brief history as seen through the eyes of this man of Puerto Rico. And when he gets to be a young man in the 60s and 70s, which is a turbulent time for Puerto Rico, he and some friends decide that they can no longer take it. They have to leave. They have to find something different and make their way somewhere else. But they want it to be in the Caribbean. Can't be someplace else. They want to continue being who they are in an island close by, so that they can demonstrate to their fellow citizens in Puerto Rico that they can govern themselves, that they don't have to be a colony. And so they go on a quest to find this island. And I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm telling no spoilers here. I'm not going to tell you how they find the island of Luzbella. But what I will tell you is that Uriel, the president, is so completely identified with his new home, with the island of Luzbella, and with the people that go with him. They're all of one mind in making and forging a new life for themselves on this island. And his love for what that island has become, which is a utopia. It is, when you read it. It's heartwarming. It's even funny, right? Because as a journalist, Hugo Quesada asks him his questions about his past. And throughout the interview, you see that the president becomes so involved in going back to the story of how they have achieved so many things in Luzbella that the journalist has to keep bringing him back and bringing him back to the subject at hand. There's a lot of humor in this book. But the interview can be long-winded. And even though I was enjoying the interview and the back and forth and the love that Uriel has for his country and learning about how they accomplished their economy and how they established their currency and how they have sustainable agriculture, how they made businesses and are exporting organic fruit, all of this, it was getting to the point of, well, wait, this is going to go on forever. When does it stop? And that's when part 2 comes. And part 2 blew my mind completely. I'm not going to tell you anything else because I don't want to spoil it for you. La segunda parte is like another book. And it is fascinating. And in this part, there are more characters. It's not just the two, the journalist and the president. No. It's a completely different style. And we have like a dozen new different characters involved in the second part. And there's a play on the word Resplandor. Now, Resplandor de Luzbella can mean a couple of things here. Resplandor means brilliance, right? The brilliance of the island of Luzbella. It can mean that. But in the second part of the book, El Resplandor refers to a newspaper, a digital newspaper. And in this digital newspaper, there are articles about Luzbella, and there are, in the second part, there are Wikipedia articles, and there's also the plot of what's happening with these characters at the same time. I was completely surprised and delighted by the humor in the second part of this book, because it is so us. It is so Puerto Rican. It has articles of different occurrences that happen in the island of Luzbella, because Luzbella also has its internal conflicts. There aren't people who are satisfied. There's a whole sector of Luzbella that has moved to the western part of their little tiny island because they don't want to come back to Puerto Rico to rescue it, which is one of the purposes of Luzbella. Luzbella was established to decolonize itself and then go back, establish themselves, and get a good economic basis and make a good civilization and 3 wonderful cities, and then go back to Puerto Rico and rescue it, right? But there's a whole sector that doesn't want to do that. They're doing fine. They don't need to go back and try to rescue these people who don't want to be rescued. They've shown for over 116 years that they don't want to be rescued, right? Why should we go back? So there's this whole conflict going on in Luzbella. And the newspaper, El Resplandor, every once in a while will publish an article having to do with this conflict. And they also publish the comments. Now, you know, people, that two kind of people, those who read the comments and those who don't read the comments. But if you read the comments in Puerto Rico, two things can happen. Or you go nuts and crazy and you decide not to read throw the newspaper across the room and never read them again. Or you read them and you laugh. And I laughed my head off. They did, the author, Juan López Bauzá, did such a great job capturing the things that we Puerto Ricans say in the comments in the newspapers and on Facebook and on Twitter. Frankly, I think our sense of humor is what has helped us to survive the humanitarian crisis that we've been undergoing for a very, very long time. Not just since Maria, but a very, very long time. So this is just what I needed. It is 2:40 a.m. in the morning. I'll be leaving in a little while for San Juan. But I just wanted to let you know that this is a book that has filled my heart and has nourished my spirit, and it's also made me think. And one of the things that it makes me think most about is the role that fiction can play when reality calls for action. Such a magnificent book. Let me know if you want me to do this in Spanish. Put the comments down below, and I'll be leaving you now. Hope to see you again soon, and I'll get back to reading what I had meant to read in January as soon as I get back from San Juan this afternoon. I'm taking my buddy read with me, Heidi. So take care, people. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.